Welcome to the Calling All Heroes Comics podcast. I am George. I'm joined by these guys.
Tim.
I'm Gary.
Tim, I'm Eager.
And Walls.
Tim Eager, Gary, and Walls. We are on episode 3 of our video podcast, and as such, our good buddy Kramer here made the suggestion that we have a little bit of a show and tell. We were talking last week about how we have a lot of people that send us messages and comments saying, you know, hey, it's great when you guys mention some of these artists. We'd love to check out who you're into, but when you just mention like the last name or it's in passing, sometimes it goes by a few people. So what we were going to do is not only dive into some of our favorite artists and writers and creators, but then also bring some of their work over the course of their career, and that way, just something that we can show you guys. You can check out and let us know, and as always, let us know if there's anybody that you're interested in. So that's our kickoff for this morning. Who would like to start? I'm sensing it's Walls.
Walls has
I'm
a treasure
okay.
trove.
Yeah, I did
treasure
bring
trove
treasure
of items here. Quite impressed.
Well, I talk about him an awful lot. It's Richard Corbin. It's been a huge influence in my life, at least in the comic collecting life. When I first saw him, I just thought he was really unique. I thought he was so much different than anything that was out there, or anything that I was accustomed to. And in the mainstream comics like Marvel and DC and such, I stumbled upon it like opening up a heavy metal magazine off a spinner rack. It was an early issue too, because heavy metal came out in '77. It was like the 3rd or 4th issue, and I was flipping through, and it was just amazing. Well, the amazing thing for me, I don't know how old I was at the time. I'm trying to think. '77. It was 15. Was there were boobs. I saw boobs in a comic. But anyways, just his whole I'm getting the look. I got the look.
It's early into the podcast too, man. Good job. Kudos to
I'm
you.
telling you. But it was not just the boobs. The artwork was.
You mean there was more?
Yeah, it was more. The artwork was amazing. The anatomy I thought was. Oh, it's not going to work. Is it?
Anywho,
Richard.
Crack one.
Okay. Rich was born in Missouri, 1940, October 1st. He's 77 years old, and is still churning out what I think great books.
Super quality stuff.
He just did that eight issue series, and for a while there, I thought he'd vanished a little bit. He just sort of fell out of grace. He created his own company, Fantagraphics, and used to sell things from his house. Like if he did a series, you could buy just like you would do ordering like Marvel or DC comics. You could
but it came directly from him.
Yeah, and it would come direct
that's
from
cool.
the house.
I didn't know that.
And it just became really laborsome, I guess, and it was hard to make a buck that way because not being under the moniker of a main company.
Right.
He did it himself, so it was, and of course you incur all those costs too, in the printing and stuff like that. Of course, all that has come full circle as far as, when he first started, he was doing like the 4-layer, 4-color press, stuff. It was difficult to print things.
Yeah.
It was a painstaking process. Now with computers and stuff, it's easy.
Right.
And actually, his daughter colors his stuff now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And
So that latest, that Shallow Graves, she colored that?
Yeah, she colored some of it. I think it was her. Yeah, she was on that. At least a couple of his contemporary pieces I've seen.
That's cool.
She went to school, and she actually went to school, I think, to study business, but was always around and always interested in what her dad did. It's pretty cool. And his wife Donna, which is really cool, Donna. You don't see it that much. It's shortened from Madonna. My wife goes by Donna because her father's name's Donald, but it's really weird. There's never
you don't
never run across too many one-end Donnas, and she's super nice, and you can send books out to the house. They live in I think outside of Kansas City. You can send stuff to the house, like they only ask 10 pieces per year, and you have to send them in a box where they can be returned. You have everything set up. I just put it in the box, waited, put the postage on it, and then mailed it out to them. But he would sign like 10 pieces, really cool, for no cost.
That's really cool.
And was very quick turnaround. But anyways, I have a collection of stuff. I don't know how well it's going to transpose, but I have a collection of his stuff that goes from. This is his first piece. It's throw it there. Nobody's going to be able to see it, but I'll explain it. It's a magazine of fantasy and science fiction. It was September of 1967. It was the first cover, and it has an asteroid on it. And what he did was he crinkled foil and then pressed it out a little bit and put it on the canvas, then brushed like a lacquer over top of it to make the stone effect on the asteroid. But anyways, this is a moldy oldie. That was the first thing he ever had published in 1967. he had a pretty illustrious underground career. This is a Weirdum Comics.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, and he did the cover, but the most interesting thing was, I don't know if anybody's familiar, of course, the Heavy Metal magazine and Heavy Metal movie was Den, the character Den that he created. There's a poster of Den inside this bad boy, and anyway, it's that was the first time Den ever appeared.
Wow.
A lot of really cool, very colorful underground pieces.
In black and white.
Yeah, it's a shame. If you could only see these in color, they're really cool. But here was something I thought was neat. He worked with Steve Niles and Rob Zombie. This is pretty cool. You can catch this on eBay. They sell sets of this all the time. It was a really cool.
It's a 4-issue?
4-issue on Bigfoot. Really cool.
Yeah,
That looks-
yeah.
IDW?
Yeah.
And that's like that clip of Bigfoot. That,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
famous clip. It looks
It's this one you can probably
mid-stride.
see. It's the famous striding
Bigfoot.
Was it Patterson Creek?
Yeah.
Did you ever see the bit where they showed, I think it was Mad TV or something, they're showing it and he's walking by and goes, "Oh, so hold on, Jim, we can see your wristwatch." God damn it.
They've parodied that so many times.
Yeah.
I know. But I thought Corbin captured it pretty well. But anyways, that was a really neat series. He started working in mainstream again, which in the early 2000s, which I was totally amazed by. And he worked on one of the Swamp Thing titles.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Anyways, one of the books I had sent out, Punisher One Shot, that was great. Anybody, this book you can pick up. I mean, basically a little bit over cover price. It's probably one of the best Punisher stories ever. It's towards the end of his life. It's post-apocalyptic, and he just basically goes back and hunts down all the powers that set him off to do his things. He
cool.
returns, goes back, and takes them down.
A Crow-like revenge flick.
But the coolest thing for me ever was, because I love the character so much, is his collaboration with Mike Mignola doing the Hellboy stuff. I was really I was blown away when I heard Rich is going to do like a 3-part story for Hellboy and Mike. And when I got my book signed, I actually talked to Mike about it, and he was like glowing about Rich. He's like, it was the coolest experience he said he's ever had. He said it was almost like a father figure. He's like, he invites me to his house. And Don and I go out to lunch. He said it's so laid back and really cool. He said it was one of the best experiences he ever had working with an artist.
Wow.
He loved it. And hence, he went on to do more stuff. The Hellboy Mexico, which was really cool, won the Eisner Award. And in 2012, he was inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame. But Richie was born in 1940, 77 years old, and still pumping out books.
Yeah, and that Shallow Graves, it came out, last month? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just incredible.
Yeah. And heavy metal, of course, which he's synonymous with. My favorite stuff that he did, Creepies and Eries. And one last story, which this is, I love this thing. When you bought stuff from, when Creepies and Eries and Famous Monsters and Vampirilla were coming out, they had this company called Captain Company. You could order all the shenanigans in the back, masks, videos, things like that. But you could also order back issues. And the warehouse was in Philadelphia, and apparently, they had mint copies on shelves there. I guess when you ordered one, pull one off, and they put it in a manila envelope, and pray that it doesn't get damaged.
Quote unquote mailed flat.
Yeah. And they put nothing in, no cardboard or anything.
Yeah.
They put them in a manila
Oh
envelope.
my gosh.
Well, and it's not like eBay now. You get something 2 or 3 days, it comes to you. It's like 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
And this time I happened to catch, I was home and I saw the mailman, our 3 mailboxes at the end of our driveway. I saw him getting stuff out, and I saw this envelope, and I scooted my fat butt down to that mailbox, and I grabbed the thing. But anyways, it came in a manila envelope, and I kept it in a stack of magazines, and I had it for a long period of time. And I thought, you know what, this thing's in really good condition. I'd never done this before. I sent it to CGC. It's one that came to me in the mail, like authentic, like 78 or 1979.
Wow.
And I sent it down, and it came back a 9.4.
Oh, wow.
And it's a really cool cover. This is Corbin's first ever work. It's probably going to catch the glare off the thing. Here we go. It's Corbin's first ever work
Bring that up.
for Erie.
because
It's the first cover he ever did for Erie. There.
That's definitely worth seeing
Yeah,
there.
it's really neat. And it came back in 9.4. I was really shocked. It was one that I actually sent away for, and held in my collection for a long period of time. This was when first CGC didn't do magazines at first. They just did comic books. And when they started announcing they were doing magazines, I said, I'm sending that thing in because I love it. Now I just want to display it. It sits in a curio in the house. So
Yeah, I'm sure the CGC hasn't seen very many of those.
Yeah.
So they're probably like, well, what's
You know,
this?
it's funny now. I look
Yeah.
every now and I get on there. The magazines are starting. People are starting to do
Cool.
it. Yeah.
Just look what you've done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, started. Anyways, Rich is very important to me. I just all through my comic collecting, I've always looked for his stuff. I have a lot of it. I don't have all of it, but I have a pretty good portion of it. But he was so different from anyone else. The organic look,
Yeah.
the
Still
feel, the anatomy, and his characters. I mean, sometimes it's funny because he has a style. Some of the faces are long. You know, they're just it's Corbin, and you can put 50 pieces of artwork up, and I'll look at it, and it doesn't even have to be like a monster or superhero or whatever. I can tell you who Rich Corbin's is just by looking at it.
The
And that's a cool thing.
Yeah, the Corbin nose. Man.
Yeah, the Corbin nose. Yeah, the jangly nose.
That honker.
Yeah, but a lot of his characters have beaks.
Yeah, they do.
But anyway, he's just meant a lot to me.
It's not a bad thing.
No.
It's neat.
He's meant a lot to me as an artist, and it's really cool that he's still producing stuff, and he doesn't do a lot of shows. He doesn't he just doesn't travel a lot. I think he's 77. But, of course, Stan's out there in his 90s doing things, but he just sort of stays away from that stuff. The last time I think he made an appearance, to my knowledge, is my cousin Mike went to the San Diego Comic-Con in 2012 when he got the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Eisner Award. He was there, but he just doesn't. He just chooses to do his own thing.
Yeah.
He's a family guy, been married to the same person since 1965. And has,
What a
has
novel
daughter.
idea.
Yeah, he's just but he's
I'd like to meet him.
He's
That'd be awesome.
He's inspired. Oh, I know. I think it would be super cool. He's inspired so many people too, because you read things like, oh yeah, Corbin. Mike Mignola, he lit up. He really did. He's like, oh my God, Rich, it was just such a cool thing.
Yeah.
I think it's neat because he's not quite as hidden away as Ditko, but he sort of keeps him to himself.
Right.
But anyways, he's a comic legend to me. So
That's cool, man.
there's my little show and tell for the day.
Sweet.
Something you said there at the beginning about how it got a little overwhelming as far as he was trying to do everything and
Yeah.
sending them out and everything. I was just thinking about that, how hard it is. I mean, if you had anything just to add to trying to wear all the hats when you're trying to publish your own stuff and you're trying to do
Oh,
stuff.
absolutely.
We've been down that road.
No, people don't realize how time consuming drawing a comic book is.
Yeah.
We're a lot of guys. I can't remember the artist, but they said that I could do I could draw an ad for Budweiser and make as much money as drawing 20 pages of comic books in a month.
Right.
As a commercial artist. That's why you probably see a lot of these people, you wonder where they're at. And they just went on to bigger. And, they love comic books, but it was very time consuming. I know Jim Lee and all those guys in their prime are spending 14, 16 hours a day at the drawing table.
Right.
And that's all they do is,
Most of them start out as commercial. Rich was a commercial artist when he first got out of college. That was the first thing he did, was doing advertising and stuff like that before he ventured.
And I think it probably just enters into that idea of needing to tell a story. You have something you want to say, as opposed
Right.
to just being, oh, here's some more work to do.
Right.
He's worked with a lot of cool artists, writers that I think we really like too. Doug Mensch, who had a long run on Batman.
Right.
He and Corbin are really good friends. Simon Revelstro did he does a lot of the horror titles and things like that. But he's worked with he's collaborated, of course, with Mike Mignola, a lot of the big guys in the writing field too. And I don't know, cool stuff.
That is cool. Tim, what do you got going on here?
Well, I have delved into my Mad Magazine collection of things. The Mad Magazine's been around since the early 50s. Wally Woods is one of the characters that I refer to a lot, one of the artists. I have you can't really see it very well, but it is a smaller book than what Wall's brought in. It's a Mad collection of Wally Woods' early stuff.
The name on that's great.
Yeah,
Humor in a jugular vein.
Exactly. He actually started out. He was born in the 20s, I think 1927.
Yeah.
And he actually started out, like you say, working a lot of commercial stuff. But the stuff that he drew, I was first exposed to it in old Mad magazines. They were my uncle's. I always refer back to you always think of the first stuff you see, just like you on the spinner rack. And it was like a reprint. Mad, they like to milk stuff. I mean, they reprint stuff and they funnel it back out, every 10 years. But I mean, they have obviously new stuff now too. But it was was actual, like, it was a Mad Super Special, and on the inside there was actually a mini comic of like the first 10 issues they would put out, and it was like, it was a cover, it was like Super Duper Man or something like that. I mean, and it was just poking fun at what I considered like, this is like, they're making fun of Superman.
Right.
Now, what is this all
Yeah.
about? And I was like 6 years old. I mean, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I've always tried to find his stuff. I mean, he created a lot of stuff. He did Thunder Agents.
Yeah.
You know, in like '67, I believe he did all like 20 issues of that.
Yeah.
But he actually he started out doing a lot of romance comics. I think those guys did a lot of that stuff just to have work. Like in the 40s and 50s. I think I was reading a thing about it this morning. I was just looking a little background on him. Some of the romance comics he was an inker for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Started out inking, and he actually would get paid like $5 a page to ink, and he would do like 10 pages a day to ink.
Wow.
These romance comics,
Right.
and
that was a lot of money too. I mean, back then,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
good money back then. Yeah.
But what I unfortunately, you know, every story has to come to an end. This guy had a very tortured life. I mean, I read about him. He actually committed suicide in the early '80s.
Really?
Yeah. Not to bring it down, guys, but you know,
Drank a lot.
yeah, and he had like, you know, kidney failure and stuff, and he lost a vision in one of his eyes there towards the end. But he, I think Bill Gaines was talking about it. Like, he was the publisher of Mad.
Yeah.
And he was saying, you know, of all the artists, he was the most troubled, and unfortunately, he was the most talented, but unfortunately, he was the most troubled.
Graham Engels was probably second in line too. Engels was all those EC guys. First
Right.
of all, I think were some of the most talented guys in the
Yeah,
business.
I mean,
EC
look at all
comics.
the early EC stuff before
Al
the Comics Code.
Feldstein, Wally Woods,
Yeah, Jack Davis.
Engels, Jack Davis. I mean, those guys in my mind were iconic.
Yeah, I mean,
but they were all
'cause-
they were. I mean, Engels was a known booze hound.
Yeah.
like he wouldn't show up to meetings. I mean, and then all of a sudden produce like, you know, 15 pages, 20 days late.
Right,
You know?
right. But anyway, it's good to laugh at stuff. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, you know, the gritty hero. You know, I love, you know, you see me laughing and carrying on, and you know, Gary's shaking his head at me, but I'm all about having a little bit of fun, and that was I still get mad to this day. I buy
Yeah.
Mad magazine every day.
It's very you.
Thank you very much.
It is.
Very.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yeah.
And it is cartoony and goofy to see, you know, like, you know, Robin's got an 8-ball on his you show that up there real close.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, come on.
Oh,
Get up
Wally
here.
Wood-
Help me out, brother.
And
Wally's
of course, he did some Not Brand X from
Yeah.
Marvel.
He did.
Yeah.
He did some stuff for Warren.
These
Oh
high-
yeah,
these
the
high
early
production
Warren's
values.
Yeah, Creepy Near he did.
Oh yeah, I like it.
A lot of the
Slow.
guys, from EC moved on
Special
to.
effects.
Yeah.
A lot of those EC guys moved on to the Warren Publishing stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys.
And it's super detailed. I mean, but he has like a trick, and you guys are going to want to read up on this. He had a thing hanging up in the corner of his studio, like where he worked, and he called it the 22 panels that always work. And he actually mimeographed this and copied it and sent this out to all these other artists and said, this has worked for him for all the years. Why don't you guys check this out? And
Give it a shot.
And you can have all this stuff that's tried and true, but at the end of the day, like George says, you know, it's all about the detail and the production. I mean, these guys were machines.
Oh.
I mean, he did like stuff for his work for DC encompasses everything else. I mean, his DC stuff isn't the most popular, but like the sheer volume of stuff he
Oh,
did
yeah.
for DC.
Well, like you just said, you were about 6 when you realized they're making fun of Superman.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a cool thing, because I don't know that I would have been, I don't think I was familiar with the concept of sarcasm or satire when I was 6.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know when that might have been, I'd have to think about it, but to know at 6 years old, this is something that's making fun of something else, as opposed to just,
Outside of political
cool.
cartoons and things, you know, that were in major newspapers, I think Mad. I mean, the whole, you know, when the horror lines went down and Gaines said we're going to go with
Magazine
humor.
style.
Yeah, magazine style.
Kurtzman.
And
Kurtzman.
and doing the Mad stuff. I think it really was the first mainstream satire, like they came in a full book.
And I'm with you about the boobs thing because, man,
Yeah.
he can draw a woman.
I think
he
we
can
all
draw.
are.
He can,
Oh,
he
yeah.
can just draw
Oh,
a woman. He
oh,
can. I mean,
absolutely.
just
Wally
second poll,
Wood.
is anyone against the boobs here? Is there anybody that's...
Hands up.
Oh yeah, Corbin
he
and
can-
Wood, man, both curvy
He
bodies.
can just
and-
draw a
yeah,
woman. I
baby.
mean, it just, you know, I'm sorry, but, you know, Jack Kirby just could not draw a woman that great.
No,
He just
no,
couldn't.
no. Let's not say things we can't take
He
back.
just
Okay.
couldn't. But I mean, I love Jack Kirby. He's great. He's super duper. He's our hero. But you know, you can't draw a woman like Wood. Wally Wood.
Frazetta,
So.
Corbin,
Yeah.
Wood, all
Yeah.
those guys were excellent with drawing. Frazetta's
So.
women are like,
Seductive.
Yeah, pretty much.
you love it.
Jump
And of
off
course,
the
you
page.
think, you think of Wally Wood, and there's, I think, a couple pictures of him, and he's got that squint because he's always smoking.
Yeah.
And you can imagine sitting there drawing, you know, and just
Well,
smoke coming
smoke's
up.
roll
you
up
know,
his eyes.
Yeah.
Well, he did a self-portrait of himself, like, because he did a lot of science fiction stuff.
Yes.
A pile of science
Oh,
fiction
yeah.
stuff. And he did a self-portrait of himself drawing, and he had like a bubble on his head, you know, like the spaceman
Yeah.
bubble, and like a little cigarette like hooked onto the outside of it, and he's like drawing all this stuff. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
Super detailed. You couldn't have Jeff Darrow without Wally Wood.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's the clean lines. I mean, his work was
Yeah.
superlative.
Yep.
Wally Wood's work was spot on. Everything, nothing sketchy.
Yeah.
Everything was solid. I
Even
mean,
towards the end
beautiful.
of his career, I mean, like that Thunder Agent
Yeah.
stuff was pretty
Oh,
solid.
real. Oh,
Yeah, Dynamo
fantastic.
at the Dynamo cover was like floating in space.
Yeah.
That crazy. Love it. So that's my guy, Wally Wood. So go look him up, guys.
Yeah.
Check him out.
Absolutely.
Wallace Wood.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's a double year.
Yeah,
What about you, Skillet?
I'll tell you what. I didn't. I was thinking about it last week, and I just didn't do the homework on this for one reason only. I don't have a collection. I don't keep an actual comic collection.
Look around.
I own all this until somebody comes and buys it.
Yeah.
But I think probably a lot of you already know the story, and those that don't, it's a long and somewhat boring one, so I'll spare you as to why. But I own probably 11 or 12 comic books. So for me personally, I'm a huge fan of Mark Bagley, and who started on PSI Force and then went to New Warriors, and I was probably about 15 whenever I picked up Wizard number 10, and they had like a whole article, an interview with Mark Bagley, and they were talking to him about how he entered this contest. A buddy had said, man, you should enter this Marvel contest, and he got to go and meet all the editors. They had him do like 3 fill-in issues for PSI Force, and then he got the call to come in for New Warriors, and he did the first 25 issues of that. Then he jumped to Amazing Spider-Man, and it just went from there. And I would say in this day and age, he's a superstar artist. I mean, would you guys agree with that?
His work on the
Yeah.
new Venom
Yeah.
is incredible. I think.
Yeah.
and
Very clean, beautiful
like,
work.
Like Gary was talking about Beasley and how, you know, Beasley stuff used to just like knock everybody out of the park, but you know, he didn't progress. But Bagley, I mean,
Oh,
the stuff in that Venom, that's like hands above.
it's
the
great
early
art. It's
Spider-Man
really
stuff, and even
clean.
the Warrior stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very clean.
Well,
Very good.
And some of his stuff, when I was at the Baltimore show, there was a guy there with original art, and I asked about the Bagley stuff, and he had penciled sketches of like the Hulk, and it was like it kind of had the mist, and some even had the Kirby bubbles like in the background.
Oh, cool.
But that stuff was just so incredibly tight. I mean, it was a penciled sketch on. He probably had 3 or 4 of them, and I mean they were $600 a piece, and they were on just pencils here. But it looked like somebody printed it or something. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I'm a huge fan of him. I mean, obviously Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. I kind of feel like I'm probably just naming names most people that are watching this already know, but that's kind of
maybe.
that's kind of my jam right there.
Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon.
Naming the names.
Yeah.
And it was really funny for him because when he broke in on Spider-Man, he followed McFarlane and Eric
Yeah.
Larson.
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, at that time that was daunting. You
That's
know,
a big
really.
deal.
Yeah.
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 Because people were looking, because when McFarlane came on, it sort of rejuvenated. You know, that character artistically was rejuvenated as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And Larson did a good job on the book too. I mean, I think the title was really cool then, and of course that's the Venom Carnage era. And then Mark Bagley had to take over for that.
Right.
I thought he did a fine job.
Yeah.
I would say more than anybody. I mean, I really, really liked Mark Bagley, but I liked the New Warriors and I liked Amazing Spider-Man. I always liked what he was already working on. More than anybody, Eric Larson is a guy that if he's drawing a book, I want to see it.
Yeah.
And that's always been the way it's been with him. I like it's not super tight at times, but there's just something about it.
It's his style.
Yeah.
I dig it a lot. And the only thing I'm not a fan of when it comes to Eric Larson is like he did think Megaton Man.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of his villains are animals that become
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
You and I have talked about that before.
I don't like anamorphic characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that either.
And I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
I
like,
don't-
and it's hit and miss. Like he has one, and I forget what its name was, but it was like kind of a shark
The
looking.
shark. Oh yeah, the shark.
creature.
Dude, yes.
But then when it gets into like bears and, and I don't know, there was
Lions
a
and
squid one
tigers and
time.
bears.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, I've seen enough of
Pushing
this.
the envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I always wanted. We touched on this a week or two ago, but I always wanted to see him do a horror book because in Savage Dragon, that first miniseries, like when it goes into horror, I think it lends to that style.
He did a couple issues of Spawn when they got, I don't know, about 15 or so back. I guess he did did it like the story arc that actually carried into the Savage Dragon as well. But he did the artwork on Spawn. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I look at him now, the stuff that he does on Savage Dragons. It reminds me a little bit of Corbin sometimes. I mean, just like any of the distance. There's this really cool splash page in the most recent issue of they had to move to Canada. They got kicked out of the United States. So the wife and the kids had to go to Canada. This is Malcolm, of course, you know.
Yeah.
And but there's this big scene of like a crowd in a party, and they're all there, and the kids are there like chewing on the leg, and they're running around, you know, and you can see all these people. It's really cool. But I looked at him like it's somewhat Corbin-esque. I was like, he's really evolved. I think Larson has really evolved as an artist.
Yeah.
And, and he like Corbin carries his own style. I think you know it's Eric Larson when you look at it.
Yeah,
you
for
look at it,
sure.
oh, it's Larson. I mean, I think for me it's easily identifiable.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
neat.
And of all the Image guys, because I think that once that started blowing up in the early '90s, it got to where I think that their time they were being pulled in different directions. They didn't have to do as much of the work, and it's almost like each one of them got their own little crew of guys that were, in a lot of ways, somewhere between paying homage to their style and flat out ripping it off.
Yeah.
I mean, they all had that little crew, and I think Eric Larson, more than anybody, stayed away from that. I mean, there was a couple times where he'd have little mini-series or this, that, but he'd bring people in that I didn't think looked anything like him. It was almost like, hey, let's see what this character looks like with somebody completely different, as opposed to, and I'm not criticizing those guys, but you know what I mean. Like Dan Fraga's pretty good. I think he's better than Rob Liefeld, but he looks like Rob Liefeld.
Right.
If Rob Liefeld were good, which we all agree he isn't.
I didn't care for
Feet.
Capullo that much. I mean, I thought he was good, but I didn't care for Capullo that much until he started working on Spawn and he started evolving there. But he also sort of aped Todd a little bit. But I think he also enriched his own style, though. By the time Greg Capullo finished Spawn, I think he became Greg Capullo and went on. His art was so tight and so much better. Because I remember some of the early stuff that he did. I was like, I'm not so sure. And when Todd brought him on the title, I'm like going, and it just got better and better.
I would think there's no excuse. There's no excuse to not evolve if you're doing a book every month.
Right,
You're cranking out 30 pages a month.
Nobody wants to see the same thing over and over again.
Well, I mean,
Marvel.
even if you're not trying to, I think it's going to happen. I mean, you're going to work through things, and I mean, yeah, that's where I would be. Gary, do you have any to add to that?
No, who made up this dumb thing?
Right? These ideas.
I didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
You created the memo.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry
You
about
brought
that.
it up there, pal. Bring it. Way to bring it. Way
Well,
not to
I
bring
have a
it.
question, of course. You got Wally Wood, the great Rich Corbin. And, of course, we talk about Kirby all the time when we're talking about artists. I wonder how they would translate in today's comics.
That's a good segue. I was reading some of this old Mad stuff the other day. There are a lot of jokes that people just won't get today.
Sure.
Like there's so much lingo. Like even if you go back, not even to the 50s, but to the 60s.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that stuff. You got to put your mindset back to that time and try to figure out what the heck they're even talking about.
I think the '60s have been popularized by in our society now. I mean, just through movie and internet and things. But you're right though. Some of that stuff you're like, what?
Well, the price though of being edgy is that you can't stay that way. That's the whole definition of being edgy. It's going to change. Yeah. So the edgier you are, the shorter of a shelf life that particular aspect of your work has. I think.
Right.
You know.
But saying how those guys would go over now today, I think it'd be great.
I don't
To
know.
see what they were.
I think
that's
there
my
are very
personal-
few illustrators out today that I think are on the level of Wally Wood.
Right.
I mean, seriously, if Wally Wood, when he was cranking stuff out.
Well,
if
the
he was
Daredevil
doing
stuff he
now-
did, the early Daredevil stuff, the Stiltman and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Well, the thing is if he was edgy then,
Perfect.
I think that if you're saying he basically, let's just say, he's 30 years old right now, I think that he would still have a cunning way of looking at society and lampooning it, as opposed to if
Right.
you're saying let's go back to 1960 and grab him and bring him up here. Like
Right.
who's expected to do that? You know.
Yeah.
Oh, he'd have plenty of material today.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
he's
right.
Oh,
right.
he
It just might be a little more of a learning
Just
curve.
turn on CNN and it's
Yeah,
on,
those guys would
you know?
love it.
Turn on anything.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Facebook, it's on.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah,
And
the
of course-
satire would be endless.
And of course, I wonder, as great a colorist as Rich Corbin is, because he paints a lot.
Yeah.
With Wally Wood, and I think a lot of these great EC, they didn't rely on what was going to be color. They did the black and white
Yeah.
art, and it stood by itself.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
makes sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where I'm not going to name any names and stuff, because to be honest, I don't know many of them because I don't care for the artwork. But a lot of these comic books behind me, they rely on computer coloring.
Yeah.
The artwork, the line work and stuff is nowhere in the ballpark of Wally Wood.
Right.
Not even close.
Oh no. And with it was funny because the Creepies and Eries, of course, were all black and white, and then as they evolved, as that magazine evolved, and it's like in around issue 60, 70 or so, they started introducing. They would put a color story in, one color story each month. You know, it's big. And I'll tell you, Corbin got like 90% of them.
Well, I think there's always that argument, black and white, because I see it all the time when you go to publish books.
Mhm.
Should you do this in black and white, or people are like, I love black and white. Coloring's always better, in my opinion, if the black and white artwork is solid enough.
Oh yeah.
That make sense?
Yes.
I mean, I always think color is better, colored art. But I think, like I said, a lot of the artists are relying on computer coloring, and if you take all the coloring away, pretty flat stuff. I don't think some of them are using the craft of inking and everything.
Right.
Because I think when Wally Wood and those guys, when they drew any of that George Evans, any of those great EC artists, they weren't thinking about coloring. They might have been, but it's almost like making a song and thinking what the video is going to look like. It's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
If
That's a
the
good
video
point.
didn't exist, the song still needs to be.
I
you
like
know.
that magazine format stuff though because it was black and white. Because
Sure.
everything else was color.
Well, sure,
I mean,
and
that's
you're
why,
used-
that's
you're
why I
used to
liked
it.
it.
And it's necessity, because if you took Wally Wood and brought him to right now, and then you took any person on here and threw him back then, who's to say these guys couldn't? They might have been able to do it. They
Yeah.
just have the luxury of not having to,
Right.
Right.
and vice versa.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't. We're playing devil's advocate there. I don't know if today's artists, but like I said, I look at some of the stuff and you're like, wow, it's not solid. It's not hitting me.
Right.
The way, like I say, you take the color away and it's going to be real thin art.
Yeah.
Real thin art.
These-
They're not using their blacks.
I had gotten a book I ordered from Amazon, and it was just about coloring your comic book or graphic novel. And it has a foreword in the front by Terry Moore, who did Strangers in Paradise. And his stuff, for the most part, was in black and white,
Yeah.
and it's pretty good stuff.
Oh, it's tight. Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
I've always enjoyed it, and gotten the chance to meet him about 3 or 4 times, and he's always been super cool. Well, he was in that. I bought the book because of his foreword in it, and it showed this picture he had drawn, and it was kind of like this little cottage on a cliff, and this big starry night, and then the ocean's there. And he said, "This is after it got colored by the person that wrote this book," and he's like kind of giving him props. Then on the back, it shows you what he drew, and any one of us could have done it in 5 minutes. It was just like, I love Terry Moore, and he's amazing, but I don't know how you can claim credit for any part of this work. This is literally a square, a cube with a roof on it and a line, and the stars, the ocean, the cliff, everything was a color. And I tend to think about that with a lot of this stuff. It's like, man, how far is this going before the colorist should be getting top billing and the artist
Yeah.
is kind of secondary? It's
Absolutely.
like those guys that just got breakdowns or the roughs, and then somebody else had to go in.
Well, IDW does the artist editions. A
Yeah,
lot of the, if you see in the big oversize.
yeah, 11 by
And
17.
they reprint. They find the original pages, and you can see the whiteout. You can see the non-photo. You can see everything
You
on
can
it.
see the
Exactly.
Scotch tape on the top
Yeah.
of it and
Right.
stuff.
It's,
Yeah.
and they're also life size.
Yeah,
And you can see these guys don't need any coloring.
right.
They make artist editions of these particular artists
Because of
how
that,
great
yeah.
their original
exactly.
art
Yeah,
is.
they do it for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and I don't know if you're going to see an artist edition of some of the guys behind me.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you peek behind the curtain. It's not the
Yeah.
Wizard
Well,
of Oz.
you talking about all those layers of people taking credit for what they worked on and stuff. When I was doing my homework, reading a little bit about Wally Wood this morning before we all got here, there was actually, he did the early Daredevil stuff, but Daredevil had guest appeared in Fantastic Four, a couple issues of FF, and it said that he actually inked over Jack Kirby's pencils of his character. He wanted to do Daredevil, So that's all he worked on in the book was just the Daredevil part.
Right.
Mhm.
And Kirby did all the rest. Kirby did, the original sketches and stuff,
Right.
and pencils and layouts, but he inked.
That's
And that's just really neat. I mean,
That's
I
cool.
just little Easter eggs like that. You find that stuff and read about it. But
Well, that goes clear back to the classic painters, the Renaissance guys, all of them, where they'll do the main characters and have someone else do the background.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that's been documented.
Will you take a look? I'm just noticing that that copy of Outcast behind you,
Mhm.
behind you, Walls. Outcast there.
Yeah.
Those I happened to see that online before those tombstones were in it.
Mhm.
That's all the colorist. The paper girls beside it. That's all the colorist.
Right.
There isn't
Right.
a line on that. And I mean, if you look at that, how great is that cover when you remove
Yeah.
the logo and the
And there again, I don't have a problem with the finished product. I don't care
Right.
what it looks like. But I'm saying as artist goes, if you really want to be a purist,
sure,
that's what we're talking about. Because the end result of this, I don't care what it looks like.
right.
Once it's colored, I don't care who did what. If it's cool, it's cool.
right.
Well, and I think it almost makes us sound a little snobbish at times. It's kind of like, for me, it's like music. It's like, okay, that's a drum machine. They're looping
Yeah.
the vocal.
Yeah.
That's auto correct.
sure.
It's like this. This isn't Led Zeppelin. You couldn't do what they did if
Right.
you swap places.
And of course, I was going to mention about music, whether the Beatles would come out today, what kind of phenomenon they'd be.
Yeah. I was having that conversation not too long ago. It might have been with you.
Might have been because I think I told you something that you didn't really believe. But go ahead.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing that.
So am
I
I.
hear a lot of things I don't believe. But
Believe it came out of
well, I was,
came out of my mouth. You understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
It oozed out. No, I was just thinking that when the Beatles came out, there was 3 channels, so you pretty much have a captivated audience. I mean, everybody's going to know about this. Whereas today, if the Beatles showed up, I mean, I'm listening to something on my iPod or whatever, my phone, and you're listening to whatever's in your car, and you
Right.
might be listening to the radio, but you're listening to CDs.
We're not all
There's-
listening to the same thing.
There's 10,000
Yeah.
channels, and none of us are watching the same thing at once. We're not even. If you're watching Daredevil and I'm watching it, we're not even having to tune in at the same time. We can do it whenever we feel like it, in whatever way we want to ingest this stuff. So I think that the audience is completely fragmented across the board when it comes to entertainment and information. So we're not going to have that shared experience. I was watching this documentary about how TV grew in the late 70s and early 80s, and they said it's something like 140 million Americans watched the last episode of MASH.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen again on anything. If the world was coming to an end, if aliens showed up, there isn't 140 million Americans watching the news, because one of the channels is going to say that they're not really
Only
here,
half-
and another channel is going to say, "Oh, they've been here the whole time."
Only less than half that many people voted for the last round.
Yeah, exactly. And what's crazy is more than that many people voted for the last American Idol. So we're everywhere. We're
Well,
all
do
over
you
the
think
page.
with the Beatles
America.
it was just a timing thing? With
Um,
that, where they came at just the right time? 64?
I
When
mean,
TV was starting to...
I think that would probably have a lot to do with
Because you
it.
hear it all the
Mainstream
time.
exposure.
Well, from One Direction, all the new teen idol bands, you hear it all the time. It was like Beatlemania. Watch any documentary on any of these boy teen bands, and
Well,
it was
also-
just like it was.
It's also the
it
first
was-
time that ever happened on a global level, so I think that's
Yeah.
what they have to refer it to. They have to
Yeah.
refer back to that. It's like, oh man, we do it all the time. Jack Kirby's kind of the
Yeah.
standard. Stan Lee's the standard. And if you really want to give somebody a compliment one way or the other, it's
Yeah.
going to come back around to Lee and Kirby.
Kirby-esque is actually a word.
Beatle-esque. Yeah, And-
Yeah, but it's funny because no one draws like Kirby.
right. It's,
And that's one of the things that I'm trying to say. There is nobody out there. Corbin, Wally Woods. There's no one out there. Bagley obviously is a current guy,
right.
still working monthly. But I don't know how many people would ever draw like Wally Wood. I wish someone would.
Yeah.
Right.
No
I-
pun intended.
And
How
maybe,
much wood?
maybe the
No.
maybe the
There
sad,
we go.
maybe as I'm smiling, maybe the sad truth of it is there's less and less of us out there looking for that and asking for it. I mean, at the end of the day, everything's going to change, usually for the worse.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, there's less people out there like him, and there's less people out there looking for that work.
Well, going back to the Beatles thing and what I said to you. That
Yeah, I can't wait to hear this.
You want to hear it again? I said to you. Maybe I didn't. It's this early Alzheimer's setting in. I seriously would consider the Beatles the first punk rock band. I mean, just sit back and listen to Revolution. I mean, just listen to that. You think about that a little bit.
Yeah.
before. I mean,
I
like
know
you said-
personally and stuff,
There's
they
an
were,
argument
they
there.
were not as
Yeah.
nice as their music, if that makes any sense.
Oh, for
Right?
sure. I remember
Yeah.
George
I mean,
Harrison
these
saying that
guys are
John
doing
Lennon.
drugs and
Yeah.
John Lennon, George Harrison, I saw him say, he's like, John Lennon sings about peace and love. John Lennon could be acid. He could stomp you in the face. And,
Oh yeah, I've heard. Yeah,
You know?
pretty.
But, I mean, like
um,
you say, everybody has an opinion, but I just
That's-
think if you sit back and listen to it for that time period,
Yeah.
in the sense
I
that
mean,
they were
sure, just-
counterculture at
yeah,
times and
I
stuff.
mean, just-
Yeah, I agree.
okay,
Yeah.
you don't remember me saying that, I'm hurt.
It's a vague
It's okay,
recollection.
man.
If it makes you feel any better.
It's all right. I'm over it.
Okay.
Moving on.